Hey everybody, we're going to talk about pedals for a minute. Kind of a beginner's guide on how to use a pedal. My dad, of all people, watches some of my videos, and he said, well, what about people who have never used a pedal before? You know, how would they use this? So anyway, this is just a cheap pedal that I got off of, I think, eBay. The Gakko Vintage Box. It's supposed to sound like a Fender. So anyway, you have a power plug-in right here. A lot of the newer pedals are coming without a battery compartment. For the longest time, put a 9-volt battery in, you plug it in. But since a lot of people just put these on their pedal boards, they're kind of doing away with the 9-volt battery. I have some tape on the back of this one, and that's another, I say tape, it's Velcro. That's another idea that, if you haven't thought about it, is Velcroing your pedals to your pedal board so they don't slide around. You can Google that anywhere and find Velcro. I would recommend you don't buy the cheap Velcro, because it's just going to fall off the back and it's going to fall off your pedal board. And first time you go to a gig, you're going to open up your gig bag with your pedal board and all your pedals are going to be all over the place. So spend a little more money on the Velcro. Make sure you get some good stuff. Just, query it out there and see what the better Velcro is. So you have an input and an output on every pedal. In this case, my input is, you see on the back of this one as well, RAT, input, output. So I'm going to put the guitar cable that I'm running to the guitar, I'm going to put that into the input. And then that next cable is going to run to either the next pedal or in that line to the amp. So that's going to take you out to your amp. The other one, so if I put this pedal and this pedal together, and I got the two pedals here, then this connection right here is going to run to my guitar. So if you have your pedal board, pretend I'm the board, like this. So if I'm the board, it's on me. The next in line here, up on top, you're going to plug in your guitar cable to it, if this is the last one in line. Okay, so that's just basically the in and out, literally, the in and output of an effects pedal. In a lot of pedals, you're going to see, in this case, like you've got a volume. This one has a voice. It's got a drive, or it might be labeled gain if you're talking about a distortion or a gain pedal, depending. This one's got a low, medium, and high. So this one's, it kind of acts as a little bit like an amp. So you can do a little bit of EQing with it. It's not necessarily an EQ pedal, but it can function as an EQ pedal. And then it's real simple. This is basics 101 kind of thing. You click it on for it to be on, and you're going to see the little LED light pop on, and click it off, turn it off. Okay, no biggie, pretty simple piece of cake. But one thing I do want to point out, and this is where a lot of beginners kind of fail. So my first time in the studio, we were paying this guy down, in this town, down yonder, It's pretty good money to do our first recording. We did, I think, 5 songs, and when I showed up with a little crate. It was like a 210 speakers in it, and I had a chorus, and it sounded like just whenever I played chords, just doesn't sound good, okay? So it took us probably an hour to try to get a usable tone out of that amp. And I've learned along the way that if you're running a gain or distortion pedal, if you're wanting more, you're wanting a heavy tone, but you're wanting it cleaner, I would advise that you don't run your gain really hot. You know, bring it down, bring your gain down. Now, if you're playing metal, like you're playing really, really brutal type stuff, you might want a bit more gain, but it doesn't have to be, you don't have to put as much gain as you think. Gain on a lot of pedals is going to give you a real sound. You don't want it. You want it clean. You want it to sound like the chord that you're playing. So you want your gain, you know, set probably halfway. Start there, safe. Another thing is if you want your sound to stand out, you want the guitar to have presence. This is not always the case, but a lot of times what you think is you're just going to crank the highs. And that helps, but you might get a little too bitey sounding. And you may not like that. An idea is to push your mids up. In the 80s, they cut the mids, and you can hear how those sound on some records, and it does sound good in some contexts. But if you're getting started, you're getting your, you know, you're trying to get your tone, I definitely recommend that you give yourself some mids. Again, start it at halfway. I like to normally keep my lows around 3. 2 to 3 is fine. I'm not playing bass. I don't want to compete with the bass frequencies. I want it to be my guitar. Now, one of the things as a beginning guitar player, especially you're jamming out in your bedroom and you're listening to your sound and you're comparing it to a sound that you're hearing in a CD or, you know, whatever you're listening to these days, you're hearing a lot of low end. But that low end generally is coming not from the guitar, but it's coming from the kick drum, it's coming from the bass and those frequencies. So in your room, to make it sound better, you know, feel free to give yourself some lows. It's all right. It's not gonna be the end of the world. But when you start jamming with guys, especially a bass player, bring the bass down on your rig, and trust me, your sound it's going to cut through better. Okay, and all these are just suggestions. You know, do what you want, but it definitely when you're playing with other folks, your sound has to be a little different than when you're playing by yourself. I mean, it doesn't have to be, but you definitely, you know, if you want your guitar to stand out in a mix, you want it to fit in the mix right. And that gets into a lot of EQing. And that's another whole story. And I've had to watch a lot of videos and do a lot of practicing with EQ. That's not something I'm normally really good at. But anyway, that's just talking about a drive pedal. This is more of like an amp in a box type of deal. But anyway, there you go. So you got your in and your out. Your guitar goes into the input, runs to the output, which runs to your amp. A lot of times that's not ever covered in videos because I think everybody just assumes everybody knows that. But a lot of times I'll be sitting there with my pedal board and I'm trying to figure out things and I'm putting plugins, especially first show jitters. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing. And you plug in your pedal wrong. Especially if you only got 1 or 2 pedals and they're on the floor, and you're like, why isn't it working? Just plug into the other side, and it should work. Okay. Another thing is that we're looking here at this rat, which I did a video on before, the little rat. Okay. Now, this has a distortion, has a filter, and it has a level. Okay. Or in this case, it says volume. Now, a big thing about effects pedals, and again, this is not something that you're told a lot, something you definitely need to understand as a beginner, is if you're running, especially a couple different gain pedals, like I have a Marshall style gain pedal, I've got a Rusty Fuzz pedal, and then now I've got the Rat pedal. You want your volume on your pedals or your levels set so that depending on what you're using it for, if it's for your normal rhythm channel and you kick it on, you don't want a huge jump in volume from, say, your clean channel to your heavier rhythm channel. So you want to adjust your levels based on what your amp is set at. So if your amp is set at 6 and this is set at, say, 9, and you turn it on and it goes from jing-a-jing to for one, the sound guy is going to hate you. So that's definitely something that you need to think about, is listening to your clean sound on your amp, or maybe you use a little gainy sound on your amp and then you use a distortion box to punch it. You don't want a huge jump, because that's your sound guy is going to be a little frustrated. And when you're playing and everybody gets used to one of your tones, and then you hit another button and bam, it jacks it up, and everybody, all they're hearing is you. Okay. The other thing is so you have 2 pedals, and on the pedal board, just kidding, but you have 2 pedals. Well, both of these have a level or a volume, depending on how you want to say it. If you're running both at the same time and you have the levels cranked, you end up another issue there. And if you have, say, I've got 10 pedals, and 10 pedals have, a volume level, it's gonna get progressively louder, possibly progressively more distorted. So anyway, those are a few things to think about when you're using effects pedals. And so hopefully you find that helpful. Just kind of a rundown here real quick. What I covered, you got your input and your output. The input is your guitar. You're inputting your guitar into it. Output going to your amp. When you're setting up your effects pedals, try to keep your gain down if you're wanting to hear the notes when you're playing distorted or heavy gain, heavy rock sound. If you're trying for an AC/DC type of vibe, they don't use a lot of gain, they use a lot of volume. So a lot of power in those amps. If you're going for more of a say Pantera type of vibe, they're going to be using a lot more gain, a lot more distortion. Still maybe not as much as you think, but depending on your music. The other thing is remember, set your volumes when you're practicing at home, when you're practicing with your band. Make sure that your clean volume on your amp isn't super quiet, and then you hit your distortion pedal or fuzz or whatever and it jacks it straight up. Again, the sound guy is not going to be too happy with you. Anyway, so those are some things that I thought of that might help in your journey to be better musician. So God bless you guys. Take care. Have a wonderful weekend, day, evening, morning, whatever it is. Take care. Bye.